Good afternoon, everyone, respected dignitaries on and off the dais, faculty members, and my dear friends. I, Isha Khiramka, feels immense pleasure to introduce the guest of honor, Mr. Apurva Chamaria. Sir is the head of global brand and digital marketing for HCL Technologies, a 6.8 billion IT company. He is responsible for handling of various profiles like brand marketing, employee marketing, proposition development and marketing, digital marketing, etc. Under his leadership, HCLT debuted at Interbrand Top 100 Indian Brands at number 19 and grew 35% YOY on brand value, and also featured in the Brand Finance Global 500 2015 at 497th position. In his 10 years of HCLT, he performed various roles including being CEO Vineet Snayer's EA, Sales Director at HCL America, and leading marketing and strategy for enterprise application business. Sir holds a double master business management from IMI and advertising from IIMC, and he is also a regular speaker at various conferences like American, Microsoft, Paul Writer, Great Indian Marketing Summit, etc. Last but not the least, Sir is a member of the advisory board at Mudra Institute of Communication, Ahmedabad, and also a columnist for the Pitch and Digital Marketing Asia. His upcoming book on You Are the Key, Unlocking Doors Through Social Selling is being published by international publishing house Bloomsbury. May I now request Sir to enlighten us with his words of wisdom. The podium is all yours, Sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Isha. It's great to be back on campus, and you have a beautiful campus, so it's a great place to study. And I wanted to thank Professor Bala, other faculty, and the student coordinators for inviting me and having me over here. I'm coming back to Pune after 15 years, and the city has changed a lot. I couldn't recognize it when I got off the flight and I started coming towards the campus. All the familiar landmarks seemed changed. It's been an interesting journey, I think, for the city. On the way here, I was thinking about what should I speak about. I'm a big fan of not using slides, so there are no slides, or I don't believe in death by PowerPoint. So one of the most interesting things I do as a part of my role with HCL and also in my personal capacity is talk to a lot of startups. I mentor a lot of startups. I'm a part of startup conferences where I speak. And I personally feel startups are one of the most interesting things happening in the Indian economy right now. So while thinking about what should I speak about, the topic which I finally thought would make sense to you and which hopefully you would have not covered in business school is what makes a company survive or what makes a startup scale. I end up traveling a lot. So last week I was in US, then went to Europe before coming to India. And one of the firms which we work with is Anderson Hovitz. So Anderson is one of the top private equity firms in the world. And I was with one of their senior partners in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. And he told me an interesting statistic. He told me every year almost 3,000 firms are funded in Bay Area. So 3,000 companies successfully raise a lot of money in Bay Area every year. Any guesses on what is the mortality rate? How many companies go out of business or don't make a substantial mark in the ecosystem? 99.99% of companies fail. Is that a good news or bad news? I think it's the best piece of news you could have heard. Because it means if you play it well, you pretty much have no competition. I'm an eternal optimist. So 99.99%, I'll take the probability. It looks good to me. Now, what makes a company fail or survive? Isn't that an interesting question? So there have been management thinkers which have written books like, Built to Last, Good to Great, Jim Collins. And those books were very relevant if you go back 10, 20 years ago, but the world has changed. And it's become a more interesting place. If you look at companies like Amazon, at $100 billion of revenue, their profitability is only 1.5%. If we go back 20 years ago, their market cap would have been nothing because only 1.5% profit. Today their market cap is $500 billion or even more. So Michael Porter used to talk about cost leadership or profit leadership. Today we are living in a world of experience leadership. Are you familiar with the word experience leadership? So it's a very interesting word. It basically means that you might not be the most profitable in the short run. You might not be the biggest market shareholder in the short term. But if you're configured for growth and you are an experienced leader, you will end up doing very well. There is something called Red Queen effect. Have any of you followed Alice in Wonderland? It's a great book. I think it's one of the best books ever written on business strategy. It's seen as a children's fairy tale book, but it's one of the best books written on business strategy. So Red Queen effect says that you have to run faster even to stay in the same place. That's what the world has come to. If you run really fast, you will end up staying at the same place. You will at least not lose market share or mind share. And you have to do something very, very different to gain market share. Today's world is also driven by the sharing economy. In a lot of countries, youngsters such as yourself prefer to share than own. In a lot of countries, owning cars is going out of fashion. It just doesn't make business sense to buy a car. There is no IRR model or NPV model which makes sense for you to own a car. Ride sharing or renting a car from a company like Lyft or ordering a Uber is more profitable. You get a chauffeur-driven car, you don't have to worry about maintenance, you don't have to worry about expensive parking. So sharing economy is really taking off. Airbnb. So the new world of enterprises are asset light and experience heavy. They might not have a lot of real estate, manufacturing plants, but they're very, very experience heavy. That's the world we are living in. So sharing economy and experience economy are two things I would like you to take note of. Now, what kind of employees do these companies look for? Very relevant. The second year students would be sitting in for placements in March, April, right? And the first year students would be sitting for summer training pretty soon. So what does this whole experience economy, sharing economy, startups, what kind of attributes do they look for in students, in prospective employees? Very, very important question for you to ponder. The way I look at it, there are three things you really need to be a master of. If you're truly gifted, you'll be a master of two things. And if you're one in 1,500, 2,000 students you have, you'll be a master of all three. And I call them IQ, OQ, and EQ. IQ you're familiar with, EQ you're familiar with, OQ is very, very understated and not really spoken about. OQ is operations quotient. Can you run things at a certain velocity with a certain volume, and can you run it well with zero defects? So you might be absolutely high EQ, high IQ, and still fail because you can't execute. So God lies in the details, and if you can't execute, it's very hard to be successful. So as students, that's something you should think about. The second is what kind of knowledge should you gain? And again, there is a rule of three. You should definitely have technical knowledge. You should have business knowledge, and very, very understated, you should have a very high degree of creativity. A lot of business schools, a lot of communication schools, I also end up speaking at a lot of international business schools, often teach you sound fundamentals in finance, HR, marketing, operations, IT, systems, Some of the modern schools also have courses around yoga and spiritual learning. And how many of the curriculum actually focuses on creativity? Einstein said something very interesting. He said, hard work will take you from point A to B. Imagination will take you anywhere. It's a very interesting quotation. If you really work hard and you know where you're going, it will take you from point A to B. It's a very structured, well-defined path. Imagination will actually take you anywhere. So that's the second thing which I want you to think about. If you actually look at most companies, including the companies which come here to recruit, they are mostly companies which have been configured, organized to minimize risk. So the whole behavior, the company culture is around risk avoidance. It's very SOP driven. It's very process driven. It's very rules driven. And a lot of companies take pride in being rules driven. I'm here to tell you something. Rules can again take you from point A to B. Imagination can take you everywhere. So companies which are configured to minimize risk don't maximize speed and freedom, which are very, very important for an experience economy. These companies are slow by design. For everything there is a rule. If you want this done, go to person A, he will approve it, then it'll go to person B, then it'll go to person D, and finally a thing will get approved. Most of these companies have managers who derive their power from hoarding information. Your source of advantage in the company is hoarding information. I have this spreadsheet which nobody else has. I have a bunch of financial numbers which nobody else has. Failure is often very expensive and long drawn. You have managers who create very long project plans and then work according to rules to deliver them. And it's an expensive failure. And finally, the decision making is very, very centralized. For everything, there is a VP of something who will take the decision and rest everybody implements. These companies assume that only the senior managers know what is right for the company. While I firmly believe it's youngsters like you who are the source of competitive advantage for any company. Now, how do we enable smart managers like you who are starting? Average age of a young Indian founder is 28 to 30. So if companies really want to tap into the young energy, how should they enable student managers or professional managers like you? I think it's a very, very, it's almost like an urban legend that people only work for money. Do you really believe that people only work for money? Yeah. I think a lot of companies do. So at least you know better, and I'm very happy to hear that answer. If people only work for money, then there is no difference between a coin-operated machine and a person, right? There's a very famous study, I think Gallup did it, which basically says most high-performance individuals work for either mastery, which means they really want to be the best in something. It could be best in working capital management, best in campaign management, best in media planning. Secondly, youngsters like you work for purpose. Is there a higher purpose the company believes in? It can't be selling more soaps. That's not higher purpose. It can't be selling more shoes. That's not higher purpose. Does your company make you feel you're changing the world? Is there something big? So I was very happy to sit in and listen to the gentleman from TAG. I think he was talking higher purpose. Making sure people don't lose their valuables. There is a core business problem they're solving. And the third and often underrated fact is people work for autonomy. Is there someone sitting above you who's always telling you what to do? Would you like that? Do you enjoy a sense of freedom, taking decisions, being responsible? Right? So people, most talented and exceptional people work for mastery, autonomy, and purpose. When you're looking out for jobs or for your summer training, look for a project or for a company which allows you these three things. Employees also care tremendously about the culture their company has. You want to work in a place which makes you want to get up in the morning and go to office. You want to work for people who excite you, who stretch your mind, who make you feel alive. Otherwise, every next year of your life will become more boring than the previous one. Money will cease to matter. You will have the next big car, you will have a bigger house, you will have a smaller cell phone, a smaller credit card, more legroom in your flights. But that will cease to excite you. What will really matter is, are you alive? Do you feel good? Are you making a change in this world? So let me tell you 10 rules which I've seen very successful companies, startups use very well. And feel free to chime in if you've heard otherwise. So the first rule is, and I actually call it the rule of 300. Have any of you seen the movie 300 and do you like it? Excellent. So I can see that I'm in the middle of Spartans here. The best teams are very small teams. The best class sections are sections which don't have more than 45 to 60 people. I know it's very fashionable in some business schools to have sections of 150, 200. I think it's very, very poor organization configuration design. Why are the best teams small teams? In fact, Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon, has something interesting to say. He says, a team which needs more than 2 pizzas for a lunch meeting is a team wired for failure. Interesting, right? Small teams are the best because there is always a constraint for bandwidth. I think the most innovative teams are the ones who are constrained for resources. If I give you everything you want, anybody can do the job. You don't need to be an exceptional manager. Frugality, constraints are what breed innovation. So the best teams are, if you need 20 people to do a job, you only have 15 people. You should always keep workplaces crowded and constrained. This fosters serendipitous connections. If you work on a floor where 1,000 people work and you're just an employee number or a student number, you have no idea what that other person's background is, what he or she knows. There is very little chances of you making a breakthrough innovation. So the first rule is keep teams small. The second rule is organize around impact and not around seniority. Very counterintuitive. How do firms work? Usually the senior most person is the person with the most experience. Isn't that right? Why does it need to be? There are exceptions to the rule, but usually the senior most person is the person with the most experience. What does most experience mean? Doing same thing for 20 years, does it make you more experienced? Right? So organize for impact and not experience. Organize for impact and not seniority. The third thing which you're often taught in business schools and in a lot of competitions and magazines and books will talk about it, the importance of having a business plan. Let me give you an eye-opener. Business plans are highly overrated. In your finance class, you will be taught to do a 5-year cash flow projection. Right? Highly overrated. The startup industry and most high growth industries completely change every 3 months. So if you invest a lot of time creating a business plan, creating cash flow statements, creating slideware, you'll be probably very good as an accountant, but not very useful as a business leader. More important than having a very sound business plan is having a very sound foundation. The economy will change, your competition will change. While you'll be working on your business plan, your competition will come from a 14-year-old kid who's writing software in his bedroom and who's possibly not even gone to school. How will your business plan protect you from that? You'll be completely blindsided. Any thoughts? Let me take a pause here. Does it make sense? Do some of you want to? Excellent. Another interesting part. So when I say your business should be based on a strong foundation and not a strong business plan, what is a strong foundation? Yeah? Team. Okay, team is a great answer. What else? Purpose, innovative idea. What is the problem which your product or service is solving? Yeah, execution is another. If you actually look out the window and you see all the internet companies in India, 90% of them are copycat companies. They've taken a model which exists in US or Europe and coded it in India. None of them are solving a core business problem. Very, very few companies. I was quite intrigued by the gentleman from TAG because it's innovative. He's solving a core problem. He's not just selling clothes online and that kind of pedestrian stuff. So the second thing is, to have a strong foundation, you should organize for growth and not revenues. What does that mean? See, the mistake which people will make in a business plan is, they will do a revenue projection. They will say next year we should do 5 crores. Which basically means that the moment the company hits 4.8 crores and there is 6 months left, people start slowing down. Because they already start feeling they've achieved the numbers. That year could have been 15 crores instead of 5 crores. And most companies don't have the financial discipline to change their targets every month. Which means people use a piece of paper to underachieve. And they're very happy with underachieving. So organize for growth and not revenue. Third, a lot of you are often taught to focus on competition, which I think is it's a huge mistake. Because you can either focus on customers or you can focus on competition. Focusing on two things is like an oxymoron. It's just not possible. Focus has to be singular. So between competition and customers, whom would you want to focus on? You already have all the right answers, which is great. Keep an eye out for competition, but don't be competition focused. Competition focus will only make you a fast follower. Which means my competition has done this, I should do it. It will never make you a market disruptor. The third point is, hiring is possibly the most important thing you will do as managers. A lot of you will join companies, your second year students, your first year students will possibly not get an opportunity to hire. Hiring is too important to be left to HR. And I know I'm speaking at BIMHRD conference. How many of you have HR as a specialization? No one? Very interesting. Great. I think all of you are in the business of sales, marketing and HR. Don't confuse your specialization with what you will actually end up doing. Whether you take up finance or operations or IT, all of you will be in the business of sales and marketing and hiring. When I say hiring is the most important thing you will do, great companies are built by great people. If hiring is not something you're doing personally and you're delegating to HR, you will end up getting people who are culture dilutive. So please remember that hiring is the most important thing you will do. Please hire even a junior executive in your team, in your firm personally. Every next person should be better than the previous people. Extremely, extremely important for a high growth company. The fifth thing which I want you to take note of. In a lot of courses on culture and organization behavior, you're taught to create consensus. Let me give you a rude shock. Consensus is hugely overrated. It's like democracy. Make sure as managers, as leaders, you listen to everybody, but don't focus on aligning everybody. It's a huge waste of time. And for high growth companies, you can't afford to waste time. Make sure your culture focuses on listening to everybody, taking a decision, and making sure everybody backs the decision once the decision has been taken. Let's talk about communication. In communication, my only feedback is, when you're talking about communication, default to open. I've seen a lot of companies where managers don't cascade well, which means information hoarding. I come from a very large firm. It's a $7 billion company. We operate in 32 countries and we employ about 110,000 people. Every year we hire 900 MBAs. So it's a pretty large firm by any size. Some of the things which companies pride themselves on is keeping business plans and strategy plans very well hidden, which means other than the CEO and a couple of presidents and executive vice presidents, nobody knows what the company's strategy is. Now, how utterly ridiculous is that? As a young employee, you're supposed to contribute and deliver to a strategy which is only shared with you at a very abstract 30,000 feet level. Now, believe you me, if you think a piece of paper gives you competitive advantage, it doesn't. In our company, everybody, including a young management trainee, can access a portal which has recordings of all strategic business plans. We call it My Blueprint portal, and everybody contributes to building the strategy, which means the CFO's business plan, the CHRO's business plan, it's all recorded, it's on a portal. People can log in and people can give feedback to the plan. And when we started this, there were all kinds of concerns. Somebody will take a screenshot, share it with competition, and we'll be doomed. Believe you me, nothing happens. Most companies know what is the right thing to do and still are unable to do it, which is great. So please think about that. Goal setting, very, very important. How important is it to set realistic goals? Do you think it's important to set realistic goals? I would disagree. I think reasonable people only make reasonable progress. Realistic goals only allow you to reach realistic end states. If you really, really want high potential, high impact growth, please set unrealistic targets. Hire a great team, enable them, have a great culture, and please set unrealistic targets. In HR, there is a concept of a comfort zone and a courage zone. Are you familiar with it? Some of you are. Make sure that your teams and you are operating in courage zone and not the comfort zone. There is no learning, there is no growth in comfort zone. It's like exercising. If your body is not paining, every day you're not growing. Realistic targets, realistic growth, reasonable people, reasonable growth. Hire unreasonable people. one of the interesting things which you will hear a lot of people speak about it is software is eating the world. A lot of firms are becoming software driven. It's not manufacturing which is going to be your source of competitive advantage. If software is your source of competitive advantage, who are the people you should listen to? Should it be the accountants? Every company will have either a R&D setup or a software team which is building the product. I think those are the people you should listen to. Those are the people you should put in front of customers in terms of prospective customers and use that to drive decision making, because they are the closest to the product and they are the closest to the customers. One final piece of thought. Try to imagine the unimaginable. Because a lot of unimaginable is coming to life as we speak. Anybody who tells you it can't be done, it's great, because there are going to be a lot of people like that person who feel it can't be done, which means there is a great business opportunity there. You're just about to graduate from a life of classrooms to the classroom of life. So these are 10 things which, if you can remember, use some of it, I think it will stand you in very good stead. I would love to know your feedback, comments. You can write to me on Twitter, you can write to me on LinkedIn, and even ask me a few questions right now.